As the evening light faded into the soft glow of twilight, Rebecca sat alone in the quiet stillness of her bedroom. She cradled her swelling belly, whispering stories and promises to the unborn child within her. The room was filled with the gentle hum of a nearby fan, its breeze carrying the faint scent of lavender and jasmine from the garden outside. This moment of solitude was bittersweet, tinged with the joy of impending motherhood and the ache of absence left by the child's father, Tommy, who was no longer part of their lives. "Your father was like the wind, my dear Tommy," she murmured, her voice a soft lullaby against the quiet of the room. "He could fill the sails of your heart with dreams and adventures, then shift suddenly, leaving a chill in his wake." Tears gathered in her eyes as she reminisced about the man she loved, a man as mysterious and fickle as the breeze, whose departure had been as swift as it was unexpected. Rebecca's relationship with Tommy had been a whirlwind of intense emotions and fleeting moments. They had met during a summer that burned too bright, their love ignited amidst the laughter of beachside bonfires and long walks along the shore under starlit skies. Tommy had been captivating, a free spirit with a smile that could light up the darkest days. But as the seasons changed, so too did the nature of their love. The promises of forever had slowly been eroded by the reality of their differences and the responsibilities that Tommy wasn't ready to face. Now, as she prepared to bring their child into the world alone, Rebecca felt the weight of her choices and the longing for what might have been. She had built a small life for herself in the town where she grew up, surrounded by old friends and the familiarity of neighborhood streets. But inside her home, each corner was a reminder of the dreams she had once shared with Tommy. The baby kicked softly, as if in response to her thoughts, and Rebecca placed her hands over her belly, a smile breaking through her tears. "We are going to be okay," she assured the little life within her. "We have each other, and we have a whole world to explore together." Determined to provide for her child, Rebecca had taken up work as a freelance graphic designer, transforming her creative passion into a modest but stable income. She spent her days crafting beautiful designs from the small desk by the window, often losing herself in her work until the sun dipped below the horizon. But tonight, her work lay forgotten beside her as she penned a letter to her son. In it, she wrote of her hopes for him, her love, and the lessons she wished to teach him, about resilience, about the beauty of dreaming big, and most importantly, about the strength of forgiveness. She wrote of her own fears and uncertainties, her commitment to their little family, and her promise to always make their home one filled with love and laughter, no matter the storms they might face. As the night deepened, Rebecca sealed the letter with a kiss and placed it in a keepsake box decorated with seashells and bits of driftwood, remnants of her days with Tommy. This box, she decided, would be a gift for her son on his 18th birthday, a tangible connection to the past and a bridge to his future. In the quiet aftermath of her reflections, Rebecca felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her journey had taken an unexpected path, but she was ready to face it head-on, armed with love and a fierce determination to give her son the best life possible, filled with the same dreams and adventures that she once shared with Tommy. As the waves whispered secrets to the shore, Rebecca watched the horizon, lost in thought until the sound of footsteps on the sand pulled her back to the present. Tommy approached with a shy grin, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his shorts. The beach was their canvas, a place of endless possibilities where their young spirits could soar without the weight of the adult world. That afternoon, they decided to build a sandcastle, their first project together. With each scoop of wet sand, their fortress took shape, adorned with seashells and bits of driftwood. Tommy worked meticulously on the towers, while Rebecca crafted the walls, her fingers skillful and gentle. As they worked, Tommy shared stories of his adventures by the creek behind his house, speaking of frogs and hidden treasures with wide-eyed enthusiasm. Rebecca listened intently, her laughter mingling with the seagulls' cries overhead. The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As they admired their handiwork, Tommy turned to Rebecca with a serious expression, a rare sight on his usually cheerful face. "Do you think this could last forever?" he asked, gesturing to their sandy creation. Rebecca followed his gaze, her heart sinking slightly. "The tide will take it eventually," she replied softly, "but we'll still have the memory. And we can always build another one." Tommy nodded, seeming to consider her words. He kicked at the sand, watching it scatter. "I wish some things didn't have to end," he murmured. Rebecca reached out, squeezing his hand. "Me too, Tommy. But sometimes, endings make way for new beginnings. We just have to be brave enough to find them." Her voice was gentle, trying to offer comfort to her friend whose thoughts seemed far too heavy for someone so young. As the first stars appeared, they packed up their things and prepared to leave. Tommy paused, looking back at their sandcastle, now just a silhouette against the darkening sky. "Promise we'll come back?" he asked, a hopeful note in his voice. "I promise," Rebecca assured him, giving his hand another squeeze. True to her word, they returned many times that summer, each visit strengthening the bond that had begun over a shared apple and a sandcastle. They explored the rocky coves and collected seashells, each day a new adventure. But as the summer waned, so did the days of carefree exploration. School loomed on the horizon, bringing with it the unspoken acknowledgement that things were about to change. Yet, in the golden glow of those summer days, their friendship blossomed. They were no longer just children who had met by chance, they were confidants, partners in mischief, and keepers of each other's secrets. The beach became their refuge, a place where they could escape the complexities of growing up and just be Tommy and Rebecca, two friends against the world. In those moments, with the sand beneath their feet and the ocean's chorus in their ears, they found solace in their shared solitude. It was a magical time, a chapter of their lives neither wanted to end. But as all children learn, the tides of time wait for no one, and all summers eventually fade into the cool embrace of autumn. As the first rays of the morning sun began to kiss the horizon, Tommy awoke with a feeling of anticipation that was almost tangible. He had always been an early riser, but today was different. Today, he would share something special with Rebecca, something from his heart, a secret spot by the sea that he had never shown anyone else. The night before had been a milestone. Rebecca, pretending to fall asleep in Tommy's room, had stayed the night. For the first time, the two shared more than just playful days at the beach or idle chats. They shared dreams whispered into the night air, their voices low under the glow of the moonlight streaming through the window. Tommy tiptoed around his room, careful not to disturb Rebecca, still pretending to sleep in the corner. He watched her for a moment, her chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. The trust she showed in staying with him, in the sanctity of his space, filled him with a warmth he struggled to understand. It was a mixture of pride and a profound sense of responsibility. Today, he felt, needed to be perfect. By the time Rebecca stirred, the sun was higher, and the room was filled with golden light. "Morning," Tommy whispered, handing her a glass of water. "Did I really fall asleep here?" she asked, her eyes blinking away remnants of sleep. "You did," Tommy grinned. "And today, I've got something amazing to show you. Just trust me, okay?" Rebecca's curiosity was piqued as she nodded, her usual vibrant energy tempered by a serene calm. They ate a quick breakfast, and then Tommy led her out of the house. They walked side by side in comfortable silence, the kind only true friends can share, until they reached the cliffs overlooking the beach. Below them, the sea stretched vast and endless, waves crashing against the rocks in a steady rhythm. Tommy took Rebecca's hand and led her down a hidden path that zigzagged through the cliffs. The path was narrow and overgrown, barely visible if one didn't know it was there. After a few minutes, they arrived at a small cove, secluded and untouched, the sand pristine and the water clear blue. It was a natural haven, hidden from the world by the towering cliffs. "I come here when I need to think," Tommy confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Or when I feel sad. But today, I wanted to share it with you." Rebecca's eyes widened in awe. The beauty of the place was overwhelming, almost sacred in its tranquility. "Tommy, it's beautiful," she breathed out, her words catching in her throat as emotion welled up inside her. They spent the day there, talking and laughing, sharing stories and secrets they had never told anyone else. It was as if the cove had cast a spell on them, deepening their bond, making each laugh richer and every confession more profound. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with strokes of orange and pink, Tommy turned to Rebecca, his expression serious. "I wanted today to be special because I wanted you to know how much your friendship means to me. You make me happier than I thought possible." Tears shimmered in Rebecca's eyes as she hugged him tightly. "Tommy, this has been the best day ever. I promise, no matter where life takes us, I'll never forget this day or this place." In that beautiful, hidden part of the world, two hearts promised to hold on to their friendship, unaware of the winds of change that would soon challenge their resolve, yet confident in the enduring power of their bond. As the sun began to sink below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the beach, Tommy and Rebecca found themselves alone on the old rusty boat. It was a day unlike any other, colder than usual for a summer afternoon, and they had dressed warmly in thick sweaters and woolen caps. The boat rocked gently on the calm sea, creating a soothing rhythm that echoed the peaceful atmosphere around them. Rebecca leaned against the edge of the boat, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the sea met the sky in a line of shimmering gold. Tommy, feeling more adventurous, stood up, balancing himself as the boat swayed. He reached out his hand to Rebecca, encouraging her to stand beside him. "Come on, it's like we're at the edge of the world," he urged, his voice filled with excitement. Hesitant at first, Rebecca took his hand, her grip tightening as she found her balance. Together, they stood side by side, looking out at the vast ocean. It was a moment of freedom, the wind tugging at their clothes, the salty air filling their lungs. Tommy watched as Rebecca's hair flew around her face, her cheeks flushed with the cold and the thrill of the moment. "Imagine if we could just sail away, explore the world together," Tommy said, half joking but with a wistful tone in his voice. Rebecca laughed, the sound mingling with the calls of distant seabirds. "And leave everything behind?" she asked, turning to look at him, her eyes sparkling with the idea. "Why not?" Tommy shrugged, his imagination fueled by the boundless sea. "We could discover hidden islands, treasure, or maybe even new lands no one knows about." For a brief moment, the fantasy took hold, and they indulged in the possibility, allowing their young minds to wander through adventures that stretched far beyond the familiar shores of their beach. But as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the water, a chill settled between them, a reminder of the world waiting beyond their secluded spot. "It's getting cold," Rebecca murmured, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. Tommy nodded, feeling a sudden pang of sadness at the thought of returning to shore, to reality where such dreams could not follow. As they prepared the boat to head back, Tommy found a small, weathered seashell in the bottom of the boat. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands before handing it to Rebecca. "Here, keep this," he said softly. "So even if we never find our hidden island, you'll have a piece of this one." Rebecca took the shell, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'll treasure it," she promised, slipping the shell into her pocket. They rowed back to shore in silence, each lost in their thoughts, the magic of the day lingering like the light of the setting sun. That night, as Rebecca placed the shell on her bedside table, she felt a surge of emotion. The shell, a simple, insignificant object, had become a symbol of her friendship with Tommy, a friendship she now realized was more precious than any adventure they could ever imagine. It was a treasure in its own right, one she would hold on to long after the summer ended, and life's inevitable changes pulled them in different directions. As Rebecca stood at the harbor, her eyes scanning the crowd for Tommy, the cold sea breeze tugged at her jacket, a sharp reminder of the change that was sweeping through her life. Each gust felt like a whisper, urging her to hold on to the memories of home as she braced for the unknowns of Tokyo. But as the minutes ticked by, hope began to wane, and Tommy was nowhere to be seen. Her heart sank. The friend she had laughed and shared secrets with had broken his promise, leaving her to face this pivotal moment alone. Inside her, a turmoil of emotions churned. There was hurt from his absence and fear about moving to a new country, but above all, there was a deep, gnawing ache for the friendship that she feared would now be lost in the seas of time and distance. As the ferry's horn sounded, a deep, melancholic bellow, Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. She turned away from the departing shore, not wanting the last image of her home to be tainted by sadness. During the long voyage, Rebecca's mind replayed their final days together, their laughter echoing against the sound of the waves, the way Tommy's eyes crinkled when he smiled, how safe she felt when they shared secrets that no one else knew. She clung to these memories, a lifeline in the vast emptiness that seemed to stretch out before her. Arriving in Tokyo was a sensory overload. The bright lights, the bustling streets, and the cacophony of sounds were a stark contrast to the quiet beach town she had left behind. Rebecca tried to embrace the new experiences, but her heart longed for the simplicity and sincerity of her days with Tommy. She threw herself into school and new friendships, yet the shadow of what she had left behind lingered, coloring her every experience with a tinge of melancholy. Months turned into years, and Rebecca's life in Tokyo took on a rhythm of its own. She excelled in school and found a passion for art, a way to express the emotions that were too complex to put into words. Her new friends were kind, but none could replace the connection she had with Tommy. She often found herself walking along the crowded city parks, imagining they were the quiet beaches of home, half expecting to see Tommy's figure waiting by the shore. One evening, as she walked home through a light drizzle, Rebecca stopped at a small park. The rain reminded her of the stormy day when she had left, and on impulse, she dialed Tommy's number, her heart pounding as each ring echoed in her ear. But the call went unanswered, sinking her spirits once more. Rebecca's journey in Tokyo was marked by achievements and new friendships, but the ghost of her past haunted her. She learned to mask the sadness with smiles, to bury the longing deep within her art. Yet, every raindrop, every wave crashing against the shore in her paintings, was a call back to Tommy, to the friend who had shaped her childhood and whom she still hoped to find again, perhaps not on the shores she had left, but in some future place where past promises could finally be redeemed. As Rebecca stepped into the dimly lit hut near the beach dock, her heart raced with a cocktail of anticipation and dread. The room smelled of salt and old wood, the kind of scent that usually brought comfort. But today, it was overshadowed by the uncertainty of facing Tommy after so many years. Tommy, now more a man than the boy she remembered, stood across the room, disbelief etching his features. His initial shock gave way to a hesitant smile. "Rebecca?" he asked, his voice a mixture of hope and confusion. "Yes, it's me," she replied, her voice trembling slightly as she took a step closer. The space between them felt charged with the electric buzz of old memories clashing with the present. Seeing him in person after all this time was like opening a book to a chapter she thought she had lost forever. His eyes still held the same warm light, but now there were lines around them, marks of time that told stories of laughter, pain, and perhaps loneliness. "I can't believe you're here," Tommy said, moving towards her. They embraced, a tight, lingering connection that spoke volumes. Rebecca could feel his heart pounding, mirroring her own. Pulling back, Tommy's expression turned somber. "I missed you," he admitted. "I always wondered what it would have been like if you hadn't moved away." Rebecca nodded, her eyes moist. "Me too. But we were kids, Tommy. There was nothing we could do." They sat down on an old, creaky sofa that seemed to groan under the weight of their shared past. Tommy took a deep breath. "Why now, after all these years?" he asked, not in accusation, but in genuine curiosity. Rebecca sighed, looking down at her hands before meeting his gaze. "After my grandfather passed away, I realized how much of my life I had spent holding on to ghosts. I needed to see if the ghost of our friendship was something real or just another shadow." Tommy reached out, taking her hand in his. "It was always real to me, Rebecca." The conversation flowed then, as if the dam of years had been broken. They talked about everything, their adventures as children, the pain of their parting, and the paths their lives had taken since. Tommy had stayed in the town, taking over his family's boat repair shop. Rebecca had traveled the world but always felt something was missing. As the evening drew to a close, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and red, Rebecca knew that coming back was the right decision. Despite the years and the pain, the connection they had was still alive, something tangible that could be rekindled. "Let's not wait another decade to do this again," Tommy said with a hopeful grin as they stood by the door. Rebecca smiled, feeling a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Definitely not. Let's make sure of it." They promised to keep in touch, to rebuild the friendship that had once been a cornerstone of their lives. As Rebecca walked back to her grandfather's house under the starlit sky, she felt a sense of peace. The past would always be a part of her, but now she could look forward to creating new memories, perhaps with an old friend by her side. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sea, Rebecca and Tommy stood side by side, lost in the memories that the beach evoked. The last time they had been here together, they were just children, unaware of the harsh realities that lay ahead. Now, as adults, they confronted their past with a mix of nostalgia and sorrow. Tommy turned to Rebecca, his eyes reflecting the twilight. "Do you remember how we used to dream about sailing away on that old boat?" he asked, nodding towards the rusty vessel that somehow still clung to the shore. Rebecca smiled, a tear tracing her cheek. "I do," she replied softly. "We were going to explore the world together." She paused, her voice catching. But then, life happened. They walked towards the boat, each step stirring up the sands of their shared history. As they reached it, Tommy impulsively grabbed Rebecca's hand, pulling her closer. In that instant, with the chill of the evening air wrapping around them, the years seemed to melt away. They were no longer just friends but the embodiment of every unspoken promise and silent apology that had accumulated over the years. "Rebecca, I'm so sorry I wasn't there at the harbor," Tommy suddenly confessed, his voice thick with emotion. "Every day since, I've wished I could go back and change that morning." Rebecca looked at him, her heart aching with the weight of what could have been. "Why didn't you come?" she asked, not to accuse him, but needing to understand. Tommy hesitated, then released a heavy sigh. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of seeing you leave, scared of facing the emptiness I knew would fill my days without you. It was easier to hide from that goodbye than to face it." His honesty broke down the last barriers between them. Rebecca stepped forward, embracing him tightly, her head resting against his chest. I missed you so much, she whispered. They stayed like that for a while, simply holding each other, as the waves lapped gently at the shore. It was Tommy who finally spoke, breaking the serene silence. Let's make a promise, here and now, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion. No more goodbyes, no more running away from what we feel. Rebecca nodded, her eyes locked with his. Just truth, no matter how hard, she agreed. With the pact sealed, they spent the evening reminiscing about the past and dreaming of the future. As night fell, they decided to dine at Rebecca's place, where the familiarity and warmth of her home welcomed them. During dinner, as Tommy devoured the sandwich Rebecca had made, she couldn't stop staring at him, seeing not only the boy she had once known but also the man he had become. This was their moment, a chance to rebuild from the ashes of their youth. After dinner, the conversation turned deeper, discussing their lives, dreams, and regrets. It was a cathartic experience, laying bare their vulnerabilities and discovering that despite everything, their connection remained unbroken. As they talked, they realized that this was not just a reunion but a new beginning. In the quiet comfort of Rebecca's kitchen, with the soft patter of rain beginning to fall outside, they found not just forgiveness but a renewed hope for the future. As the dying light cast long shadows over the room, the air between Rebecca and Tommy thickened with unspoken words and suppressed memories. Sitting across from each other at the small dinner table, the remnants of a hastily eaten meal between them, the moment of truth they had avoided for years loomed large. Do you remember that night when you said you'd see me off? Rebecca's voice broke the silence, her eyes not leaving his. You promised you would be there, but you never showed up. I waited, Tommy. Tommy shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping to the table. I thought you'd never ask, he murmured, the words heavy with regret. I overslept. It sounds foolish, doesn't it? Missing a moment that important over something so trivial. Rebecca looked at him, her heart aching with the raw honesty of his admission. It wasn't just any moment, Tommy. It was a goodbye I thought I'd never have to face. When you didn't show, it felt like you didn't care enough to even try. I did care, Rebecca. More than you can imagine. Tommy reached across the table, his hand tentatively covering hers. That morning, I woke up in a panic, realizing I'd missed the ferry. I raced down to the harbor, but by then, the boat was just a speck on the horizon. I watched it disappear, feeling like I was losing a part of my soul. The vulnerability in his voice stirred something deep within Rebecca. She squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. I've regretted that morning every day since, Tommy confessed, his voice thick with emotion. Not just because I missed saying goodbye, but because I let you go without knowing how much you meant to me. Without you, Rebecca, there was a void in my life that nothing could fill. Rebecca felt tears welling up in her eyes as she listened to Tommy's heartfelt words. It was a pain she too had carried, a wound that had never fully healed. I missed you so much, she whispered. Coming back here, finding you, it's like a part of me has been restored. But there's also so much we lost, so much time we can't get back. Tommy nodded, his own eyes glistening. I know, and I'm sorry for the pain I caused. But being here with you now, it feels like we've been given a second chance. I don't want to waste it, Rebecca. I want to make things right between us. As they sat there, the world outside faded away, leaving only the two of them, wrapped in the soft glow of the fairy lights. They talked for hours, delving into the years they'd spent apart, sharing their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and defeats. With each word, the bond that had formed in their youth rekindled, growing stronger with the passing of the night. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to seep through the curtains, Tommy took a deep breath. Rebecca, I have something important to ask you. His voice was serious, filled with a resolve that had been forged in the fires of their conversation. Yes? Rebecca's heart pounded in anticipation, her breath caught in her throat. Stay with me, Tommy said simply. Let's not leave things to chance anymore. Let's build a life together, here, where it all started. Rebecca looked into Tommy's eyes, seeing the sincerity and love that shone back at her. A smile slowly spread across her face as she nodded, her heart soaring with hope and love. Yes, Tommy. Let's start anew, together. As dawn broke over the quaint seaside town, Rebecca stood alone, her silhouette outlined against the creeping light. She clutched the cold, metal gate of the cemetery, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. Today was the day she would change everything. She had fought tooth and nail to reach this moment, facing ethical debates and emotional turmoil that would have broken a lesser spirit. But not hers. Rebecca was driven by a love that transcended the grave itself. Inside the cemetery, the grave of Tommy lay undisturbed, a silent testament to the quiet end of a vibrant life. As she approached, her steps faltered, memories of their last days together flooding back. She remembered his smile, the warmth of his hand in hers, the devastating numbness that had gripped her heart as she watched his life slip away in that tragic accident. It wasn't just a life that had ended that day, it was the future they had dreamed of together. Now, with the permission finally secured after countless meetings and heart-wrenching pleas, Rebecca was ready to invoke the unimaginable. The cloning process wasn't just about bringing Tommy back, it was about restoring a piece of her soul that had died with him. The biotech company had assured her of the success rates, but it was the emotional assurance she craved, that she could look into those eyes again, see that smile, feel that love. As the workers began to prepare the site for exhumation, Rebecca's mind wrestled with the morality of her decisions. She knew many would judge her, maybe even call her mad. Yet, in her heart, she felt Tommy's tacit approval, urging her on from wherever his spirit now resided. She could almost hear his gentle voice in the wind, "Go for it, Bex. We never played by the rules, did we?" The sun was higher now, casting long shadows over the grave as the sound of shovels digging through the earth filled the air. Rebecca watched, her hands clenched, her body tense with every movement that brought her closer to her goal. The workers, respectful and somber, seemed to understand the weight of their task, the profound oddity and significance of their actions. When the casket was finally unearthed, the breath caught in Rebecca's throat. This was it, the moment of truth. The biotechnicians, clad in their sterile white suits, approached to collect the DNA samples. As they worked, Rebecca felt a surreal sense of disconnection. Was she merely a spectator in this bizarre chapter of her life, or was she the orchestrator of a new beginning? By late afternoon, the sample was secured, and the grave was restored, as if nothing had happened. Rebecca stood by the fresh earth, a mix of relief and apprehension churning within. She whispered a thank you to the breeze, hoping it carried her words to Tommy, wherever he might be. The journey back home was a blur. Her mind was occupied with thoughts of the future. The cloning process would take time, and success wasn't guaranteed, but hope was a powerful drug. She imagined introducing Tommy to the world again, teaching him about his past, watching him rediscover the world. But deep down, she knew it would be her discovering a new aspect of Tommy, one shaped by the most extraordinary circumstances. Rebecca arrived home to an empty house, the silence more profound today than ever before. She walked to the window, looking out over the sea, the waves reflecting the tumultuous emotions inside her. This was her leap of faith, her defiance against the natural order. And as she stood there, the setting sun casting a golden glow over the water, she felt a peace settle over her. Tommy would return, in one form or another, and she would be waiting, her heart forever entwined with his. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sea, Rebecca stood on the shore, watching young Tommy build a castle out of the damp sand. His laughter, carefree and infectious, echoed against the rhythmic crashing of the waves. She couldn't help but smile, though her heart ached with a blend of joy and sorrow. In this quiet seaside town, far from the prying eyes and harsh judgments of their old community, Rebecca had hoped to find peace. She and Tommy had settled into a modest cottage just a stone's throw from the water, where the days were long and the nights were filled with the sounds of the ocean, a constant, soothing presence. As Tommy grew, so did his curiosity about the world around him. He had his father's eyes and his mother's inquisitive mind. Each day brought a new barrage of questions. Why is the sea salty? What makes the wind blow? But there were questions she feared, questions about his origins and his father's sudden, inexplicable disappearance from their lives. One afternoon, as they collected shells along the beach, Tommy looked up at Rebecca with those big, earnest eyes. "Mom, did Dad love the beach too?" Rebecca paused, her heart tightening. "He loved it more than anywhere else in the world," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. The simplicity of the answer satisfied Tommy, but Rebecca knew harder inquiries loomed on the horizon. Their life was simple but fulfilling. Rebecca took up painting, capturing the stunning vistas and their quiet moments together. Tommy attended the small local school, where he thrived under the gentle guidance of teachers who cherished his bright mind. Yet, Rebecca's heart remained heavy with secrets. The truth about Tommy's conception, a blend of love, loss, and scientific ambition, was a burden she carried alone. At night, she'd pore over her old journals, the pages filled with her thoughts and fears, the ink a testament to her inner turmoil. The community, though small, was tight-knit and kind. Neighbors would often stop by with baked goods or invite them to community gatherings. Yet, Rebecca politely declined most invitations, fearing too much attention might raise questions they weren't ready to answer. One crisp evening, during one of their walks, Tommy suddenly stopped and stared out at the crashing waves. "Mom, if Dad loved the beach so much, why did he leave?" The question hit Rebecca like a cold wave. She knelt beside him, searching for the right words. "Sometimes, people have to leave, not because they want to, but because life has other plans for them. Your dad didn't want to go, he had to go. But he's still here, right? With us?" Tommy's voice was hopeful, his young mind trying to piece together the fragments of his fragmented family story. "Yes, he's here," Rebecca assured him, squeezing his hand. "He's in the sea breeze, in the sand beneath our feet, and in your laughter. He's always with us." Rebecca knew she couldn't keep the truth from Tommy forever. But for now, she would shield him from the complexities of his existence, allowing him the innocence of childhood a little while longer. Their bond, though born of unconventional circumstances, was as real and profound as any other. As they walked back to their cottage under the stars, Rebecca felt a mix of dread and determination. One day, she would share everything with Tommy. But until then, she would savor every moment, every question, every innocent smile, while the sea whispered secrets only she could hear.